first item on the agenda is public comment on non-agenda items. Does anyone have any comments? Yes, Mr. Helms.
Yeah, thank you. I have a comment about the report in the website. I'd just like to read a short little statement.
Okay. Which report?
About the Township's investigation regarding the old tree. Jay and I, we both read the summary of the Township's investigation that events that occurred at our home on back in June. We've remained quiet to this point about the investigation. We had to give space for the board to do their investigation and issue their report. But we think maybe you ought to hear both sides of the story now that we read the report. The nature of our inquiry to the West Vincent Board was about the West Vincent Police Department's authority to allow destruction of personal property. The police had been unable to contact on that day PICO, utility companies, the township. They were in a sticky bind there. Despite this, they told the crew they could go ahead and cut the tree. So the police made a decision on the spot to allow them to cut the tree. Now this would have caused permanent damage. Can't put limbs back on trees. And it negated our ability to protect the property. It negated our ability to seek solutions through other avenues, like the avenues we're pursuing now. There are avenues with the Public Utility Commission, and we're doing that today. But that decision on that spot negated our ability to do that. The second concern that we asked the board to look in was whether or not they supported the police department in their threat to arrest homeowners for protesting on their own property. Because we protested our own property. We did. We protested by sitting under the tree. They had made a decision to allow the cut. And we understood the ramifications of that. We didn't quite understand how that was possible, but we understood we were told we'd be arrested. The police stated they would arrest us and the work crew should continue to do their work. Eventually, however, due to our protesting, somebody did get through to Verizon and they did learn. They didn't have approval to be doing what they were doing, and they didn't do the work. Now, Jane and I voluntarily participated in the board's investigation, of course. They represent us, the citizens. We gave the most truthful account possible. Now, the report talks about three different things. One, we had a complaint against some officer in training. We don't quite get that. We made a complaint regarding all the police department. And of course, then that net must have included that person. The township must have misunderstood our complaint. Because we're not concerned with the politeness of our officers and whether or not they followed procedures. We think they probably did. We were concerned with the fact that the rights of our property were circumvented by their decision. That was what we asked the board to look into. And then the idea that the police chief saved the tree from destruction, we don't think is correct. We were aware he was involved because the officer on the site told us he was. Told us he was conversing back and forth. We don't know who gave this order to allow the cutting of the tree. We were told they did. And the correct and sensible action, we thought at the time, was just for to have the police to recognize that since they hadn't talked to anyone, let this sit till Monday. Let this sit till parties could come together. Let this sit until the Helms, the township, the utility companies could get together and decide what was right for this tree. That's ultimately what did happen through our protests. The decision to have the work crew leave, that happened after our protest. That wouldn't have happened without our protest. So we did risk arrest, but we were glad to do it because we knew it was bringing to the right end purpose, which was allow open dialogue with all the parties. And that is what happened. Now, many of us saw the summary in the West Vincent website. And the press, as you probably read what we think was a very negative report about, and I quote, were characterized as harassing, threatening, and over-emotional complainants. Nobody else was characterized in that report except us. The report stated repeatedly that we were wrong, and it said what we said was untrue. It seems that we've been portrayed as the villains in this manner, Yet, we were right in the end. We have been pursuing the complaint process that I said was potentially negated with the PUC. I find that the PUC wants to work with you on that. And we've had extensive talk with PICO and other members involved. It worked out the right way, but it was a rough way to get there. We're hopeful to save the tree, and currently, the tree does stand. So thanks for allowing us to clarify the record.
Any other comments? George?
Just a quick comment. When the agendas get prepared, whenever possible, I'd ask that something a little more descriptive be put on the line if it's something that's completely new. Like last week, the last item was zoning revisions, some zoning ordinance revisions, and that probably, it would have been more helpful if it said zoning ordinance revisions pertaining to internet rentals or something like that. I think, I understand you try and keep this brief, but that would have fit on one line, and it would have been a little better communicated what was going to be discussed.
Okay. Okay. Is that all, George?
Yep.
All right.
I wanted to thank our police. They came out when I had a weird phone call that some man said he was going to come, he was stopping by shortly. And the police were there quickly and responded, and they went back and checked the phone number that was, of course, captured on my telephone, and they said he probably wasn't even in this country. It was a fake phone number, and it was some sort of scam thing. But they were very helpful.
Okay. Mr. Permonta?
I want to know why a tree on private property is being cut. They call the police, and why were the police there anyway? It's private property.
The police were there because the Helms has called the police.
No, actually, no, the police were there because the crew that was cutting the tree called the police, and the tree is actually on township property.
So every time we cut down a tree, we're going to call the cops?
Well, you run the risk if you're going to, if someone interferes with an organization which has been contracted to trim trees, they have the right to call the police if somebody is interfering with them. There's a lot of crews in this township that do tree trimming. And they do it for lots of different reasons. And they have, under the PUC rules and other rules, the rights to be there. So they have the right to call the police on someone who they believe is interfering with them, and it's the police's obligation to respond to it and determine what's going on.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Ponto? Okay?
Yes.
Okay. Any other comments? Oh, Artie.
Ken, you have to remember one thing. When you're dealing with Verizon, you're dealing with contract crews that are sent out on a job, never having been there before, and probably Verizon management didn't follow up what should have been done out there. So I don't wonder that someone would call the police. When you get some of these contract crews, and a lot of them don't speak English, you have problems. And Verizon's very lax in watching their contract crews.
Okay. Your point is exactly?
My point is exactly that when you have these homeowners have a problem, they're dealing with an entity that may not know the background on this. In other words, they were sent out there to cut a tree or do whatever they want. That may not be the right thing to do.
Okay.
Verizon management does not always follow through.
Okay. Okay. Other comments? Okay, being no further comments, we need to approve the minutes of the July 27th meeting, Board of Supervisors meeting.
Move that we approve the minutes of the July 27th meeting.
I will second that motion. All those in favor? Oh, any comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Reports, manager is next.
Just a couple of things. Want us to note that the seal coat work, which is PennDOT's way of calling the old tar and chip has been completed. It was completed last week by the contractor for the township. In terms of upcoming meetings, the Sustainability Committee monthly meeting is Tuesday, August 18th at 7:30. The Planning Commission meeting is Thursday, August 20th at 7:30, and the next Board of Supervisors meeting will be Monday, August 24th at 7:30.
Okay, Roadmaster's report is next. For July of 2015, conducted ongoing maintenance repair on township equipment, filled in potholes, mowed several roads, did some repairs to South Chester Springs Road, applied crack seal to several roads in the township, and then we also worked on roads to be seal coated. Brian?
You said you put some crack seal on. Is it any better or different than the stuff that you used before? Because the stuff out in the parking lot is still squirmy and soft.
It's all the same stuff.
So in other words, we've had problems with it, you've had complaints about it, and you're continuing to use it.
We had no complaints while we were applying it. We stopped using it when the complaint started.
You just said in your report that you went and did crack sealing.
Yes, from last month.
The last meeting is when the complaints occurred. And I know you said you were doing something about it, but it sounds like from what you've just said, that after the last meeting, you continued to use this same material.
No,
Is that
we
a
did not.
correct understanding?
We did not. We did not. Is that clear?
Fine, thank you.
Okay. Other comments? Mr. Rostrom.
What's going to be the finish of South Chester Springs Road when it's all done? Is it going to be like what's on the north side of Chester Springs, north side of 401?
No, it's going to be repaved.
Macadam.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Other comments? Okay. Active subdivision list is next. There is no items on that list that needed addressed by the board this evening. Bills list is the next item on the agenda. The bills list for August 10th, 2015, the Township General Fund bills list is $135,482.35. The reimbursable bills list is $24,897.47, and the subdivision utility plant bills list is $34,055.95. The total bills list of $194,435.77. Hear a motion to approve. Okay, okay. Do you understand the ratified invoices are on the bills list?
No, okay.
Okay. Okay. Hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments? Artie?
Ken, you have a roller there rental. Doesn't Fleck have a roller?
Yeah, but as I explained at the last meeting, when we were doing the patch repairs on the roads that we oil and chip, we ran a repair operation of the road crews, and Fleck ran one on their own.
No.
We don't have a roller, so we ran a roller.
Okay, and the other question was Verizon Wireless, road telephone. I thought you gave up all the cell phones on that. Right?
The road foreman has an iPhone, and we have an iPhone for him, and that's the bill with the internet service.
Okay.
The internet service.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Richard, go ahead.
On the subdivision utility plant bills, RJO landscaping, Matthews Meadows grade repair, do we have a description on that?
Yes, that was the new contractor who was mowing the Matthews Meadows sewage plant damaged one of the risers at the sewage plant, which needed to be repaired.
Imagine that. Any other questions about Bill's list? Brian Curry.
You've got a bill there from Blue Fox Creative for website maintenance updates. Is this the new website or the old website?
New website.
Okay. On the 13th of July bills list, we had an entry from them for approximately $1,600, again, for maintenance issues. Could we expect continuing maintenance charges like this?
No,
So we're done getting everybody up to speed and the system's working well?
well, the new website has been rolled out, the new website is up and running. If there are issues that come up, we'll address them. Because we need to make sure that the website works and that, it's there for the people in the township.
Okay. There's a thing for card member services, bill, police, fuel. I thought that the police had a separate card for fuel charges or something like that, or am I confused with that?
No, you're correct, there is a separate bill, but at times, the officers will need to use the other credit card, and they do.
Okay. D&L construction for Beaver Hill Road. What was done on Beaver Hill Road?
We did some base repair and paving repair for oil and shipping.
Okay, so that was on the paved part of Beaver Hill,
Yes.
not on the dirt side, okay. These are gonna be two combined, and they're slightly different placed in the bills list. There's from Eagle Service Center, there's 3 bills for the Crown Victoria, and well over $2,000. And I see we also have a new Chevy Silverado truck for the police. Are we prepping the 2010 Crown Vic to get rid of it, or was this normal maintenance for it?
No, if you recall, the last meeting, the board authorized the sale of the 2009 Tahoe that is currently being advertised for sale. The new truck replaces the 2009 Tahoe. These are issues which came up with the 2010 Crown Vic, which include issues that related to the air conditioning compressor, general maintenance, tires, and the like. There was just a lot of things that came up relatively at one point in time.
Okay, bad timing. On the new, trucks, are they crew cab units or just, I'm gonna say, single seat, bench seat units?
They are special police vehicles that have a second row of seats with a cage that we install that keeps anyone in the second row of seats in the second row of seats.
Good, we don't just put them in the back of the bed. Under highway materials, it's a whole bunch of asphalt. Was this for finish paving, or was this for the prep for the final paving, which we talked about last time?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part of your question.
We've got a whole bunch of bills here for highway materials for asphalt.
Right.
And was this for finished paving, or was this the prep for the final paving we talked about last time?
It was doing patch and base repair paving on roads that were oil and chip.
Okay, so in other words, some of this was used to go and take it up so it's a flush surface, so we didn't have a dip when after they were oil and chip. Am I correct on that?
Well, I'm not sure what you're saying.
Well, I looked at the Rachel Drive work, or some work that was done there. And when I looked at it, the asphalt was about an inch below the surface of the surrounding asphalt. And I think last week you said that that was some type of asphalt that goes underneath the final version.
Okay, so yeah, the top coat was put on. We put the base in an inch under the existing.
Okay, and this asphalt here is then for both base and the top
Yes.
coat?
Yeah.
Okay. There's a $224 bill for hauling. What is that?
That's from Highway Materials. I'm sure that's, I saw that, it's from Highway Materials, and it's for truck wait time.
So in other words, they went and had trucks there and were waiting for the
Yes.
road crew to catch up, okay. And the last one is for $398, and it's not assigned to any road at all. What happened to that asphalt?
That was a part of a load that Danielle, the township treasurer, couldn't assign to any road. And I haven't had a chance, she told me this afternoon about 3 o'clock when I went over the bills list, I haven't had a chance to look at it and see.
Okay. Under Sienna, Belvoir, and McAndrew, and Steve, you can correct me if I mangled Belvoir. This month, or this bill's list, we've got $8,598.90. In the 13th of July bills list, we had $8,018.50. So we're up to $16,617.40 so far. And after listening to Mr. Helms at the beginning of the meeting, I'm still going to ask this question. Do we expect any further expenses on this issue?
I don't.
If this remains an issue, yes.
Okay. And I'm also going to assume that these expenses were not part of the budget.
Not part of what, I'm sorry?
Not part of the budget.
Oh.
Well, the answer is
How would
yes.
we have written that line item up?
Exactly. Under reimbursable bills, Sienna, Belvoir, McAndrew again, we've got a bachelor land use and bachelor subdivision. Is the bachelor bills an indication that bachelor is appealing with the ruling you did a couple meetings ago? Or is this just bills accumulated for that?
I believe it was announced at the last meeting that bachelors did in fact file an appeal of the Board of Supervisors' grant of subdivision.
Okay. And there's one from Orleans, Lennar. Is this something to do with, I think I heard that Lennar bought the rights to build and sell part of the Eagles Farms development? Does that have something to do with that?
And the answer is yes. And Lennar Homes did in fact buy and just recently closed on the purchase of Orleans rights in the Eagle Farm subdivision.
Okay, thank you on that one. Optimum Controls Corporation, varied frequency drive pump. Did the pump die or is
Which list are you on now?
Utility.
Utilities, pardon me, I will go and make a note of that for next time. Optimum Controls Corporation, varied frequency drive pump. Did the pump drive or is this new for some other reason?
No, it's to replace the one that was having problems.
Was the one that was being replaced also a variable frequency drive pump?
Yes.
Okay. And Artie touched on this about the spray head repair, which apparently is related to the new folks doing the mowing. How is that ending up being charged back to the, I'm going to say the sewer users, as opposed to the person who damaged the spray head in the field?
We fully expect that it will be paid by the contractor who did the damage.
Okay, so it will end up being reimbursed at some later time?
It'll end up being reimbursed by the contractor.
Okay, that'll take care of it for that, thank you.
Okay, any other questions about the bills list? Motion's been made and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Under correspondence, we have a request to use the gazebo on August 23rd from Melissa Karate from 48 p.m. for crafting. Your motion to approve?
Second.
Any comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
And also, fall field use, Tammy.
I've had 3 different requests, and Park and Rec has approved all those requests, and that's the list of them.
Okay, the list says the rectangular field rental, Monday and Thursday evenings, GEYA soccer, September 8th through November 6th. Wednesday evenings, Coventry soccer, September 12th through October 21st. Saturday mornings, GEYA soccer, September 8th to November 7th. Saturday afternoons, Coventry soccer from September 12th to October 21st. Sunday morning, Tri-County women's soccer from October 13th to November 13th. Do we need a motion to approve this?
Please.
So moved. Second.
Any comment? All those in favor? Aye. Under subdivision land development, we have Eagle Farms, Toll Brothers, escrow release recommendations from Carroll Engineering.
These are releases that relate to expenses on the sewage system. The sewage system is operated by the Upper Euclid Authority. The Upper Euclid Authority and Upper Euclid signed off on these before they were submitted to the township. And Carroll Engineering is recommending that the amounts approved by Upper Euclid, the first one in the amount of $103,188.51. And the second one in the amount of $234,939.03, both be approved.
Can we do that on one motion or two?
I think you do it on one motion.
Move the approval.
Second.
Any comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Weatherstone Hank and escrow release request.
This was received today from West Vincent Associates, who's the developer, and we'd ask that the board refer this to Carroll Engineering for review and recommendation.
Do we need a motion for that?
Please.
So moved. Second.
Any comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, under old business, even though number 9 is awarded the equipment labor bid, Black Horse Road residents are here, they requested to be on the agenda. So if nobody later in the agenda objects, Black Horse Road residents will be heard now. I see no objection, so, yes, sir.
I'll start off with, most of us back there live on Black Horse
Okay,
Road.
we have your name, please, for the secretary.
Steve Volpe,
Okay.
and Volpe, V-O-L-P-E. Anyway, I guess all of us, most of us, after we had a meeting, for what was going to happen to the road and what was going to be done, everybody kind of feels the same, I think this is the way, feels that they're taking on too much, too much work to remove land and everything else, when a good solid surface for a road is all we really need. Our water, everybody has different variations of where the water goes down the road and how to control it, in some way. And to me, I don't think we have a problem as far as water. Water's been running across Black Horse Road for a long time, and it's not the water that's messing up the road, it's big trucks and buses and everything else. So we're saying, at least a few of us, to spend all this money to do this, when I think that everybody feels that just a good surface, blacktop road, with support, should end the problems, I think. I don't know.
Okay, as I said at the meeting, and to Mr. Nelson had emailed me, I didn't design the plan. Township engineer was directed to look at the problem and come up with a resolution. That's the plan that you guys saw the other night. I don't know what else to say. I'll do whatever the engineer, whatever the board of supervisors tells me to do. If they say do it a different way, I have no problem with that.
It just seems like a lot of money to be put out, for something that shouldn't have to be that difficult, I don't think.
The estimated cost is $75,000 by the township engineer, and of that, about $50,000 is paving, so that would, $50,000 would be spent no matter what we did. So the biggest part of the cost is repaving the road, it's not doing the storm work. Like I said, the township engineer came up with the plan and designed the stormwater to handle what, he did calculations of what comes off the hill, and that's how that plan came to be.
some people are gonna lose, a lot of their flower beds and, everything else. And the road's gonna be raised, what, 2-3 feet or something like that?
No, about 6 inches or 7 inches, I believe.
So it's all 6 inches?
Yeah.
Oh, I got the wrong info. But anyway, we're just looking for a simpler way out, so nobody,
Okay, I understand.
gets more done to their property
Right.
than somebody else.
That's why we had the meeting, so that everybody would understand what's going on.
When we had the other meeting, I don't think anybody really put any thought to it till they went to bed, you know what I mean? And,
Right.
Seems like a lot would be going on,
Okay.
and we look at all the drains on the other side of Black Horse Road,
Right, I thought I explained, though, that since there's no existing drain pipes on Black Horse Road, state law now precludes the township from installing or creating a new stormwater pipe outlet without permission of the property owner that the water would drain onto, and we were unable to achieve that, so we had the engineer come up with a different way to do it. His first look at it was to put in pipes and inlets and have a pipe discharge, but we're unable to do that, so this is the second alternative, or first alternative.
It seems like the way it was all explained, the whole program, that it's gonna be turning one way and then turning another way, because I have the feeling it would be a piecemeal thing when it went, well, okay, this day it will be okay, and the next day it might not work or something, I don't know exactly what I'm saying, but,
Okay,
it just seems like an awful big project,
right, right.
when it could be simpler, I guess, to me anyway.
Okay. Well, John and David, what do you want to do?
Blacktop Road, if they're done well, last a long, long time,
Right, right,
so.
right. John and David, what do you want to
What
do?
will be the cost of paving Black Horse? Is that, Mr. Volpe, you're talking about paving the road?
And nothing else. Mr. Volpe says paving and don't do anything else.
It's about $50,000
Yeah.
out of the 75. And what the township engineer has told us is that the reason the road is breaking up is because the water is getting into the base and getting into the road, and that you need to get the water away from the road. If you don't do that, then what's going to happen is you're going to be back repaving that road on a regular basis. It's just going to break up. And the last 2 winters saw pretty substantial breakups on that road, and I know we spent a lot of time and effort and money on cold patch that just would seem to pop right out of the holes on that road.
We've toured that road 2 years in a row, and it's pretty clear, just without being there on a sunny day, you can try to imagine where the water's gonna run and the runoff problem that was explained to us. And then the other thing is, I don't think anyone sitting up here wants to spend an extra $25,000 of your money to fix something that doesn't need fixed. But on the other hand, and that's why we pay an engineer to, and we gotta, at least in my case, I know nothing about building roads, but I would rely on his word over my thoughts on it. And I do think there is a drainage problem there, and as I see it on my own road, of course, I live on a gravel road, the drainage issue can really cause problems with the road, so, unless you tell me that we want to look at it again, I'd soon just proceed.
It's up to you and David.
I just gave you my opinion.
It seems to me that if we just go ahead and pave, as Mr. Volpe suggests, from what Jim says, and I don't know anything about roads, the problem's just gonna keep coming back and coming back and coming back. On the other hand, if we do what the engineer suggests, and we assume the engineer knows what he's talking about, and I do, then the problem will be fixed on a more permanent basis. So, with all respect to you, Mr. Volpe, I'd be inclined to recommend that we go ahead with the plan.
Yeah. Any other Black Horse Road residents have anything to say before I go to Brian? Mrs. Vermonte.
Yes, my name is Sophie Pimento, and I would like to know what is the township regulation as far as setback from the center of the road. What is West Vincent Township's ordinance, whatever you call it, for the setback?
Do you mean the right of way?
That means everybody.
You mean the right of way?
Yes,
Township.
from the center of the road that you're gonna take and churn up everything, how far back is it to my line that I know is my property?
Well, in your case, we had the engineers survey. That's one of the things the engineer does, is they also survey, and they surveyed that road, and they marked where the township right-of-way is on your road. So, it's marked on your property, it's marked across the street.
So in other words, it's 30 feet from the center of the road to the mark.
It might be on your property, yes, because what happens, it appears that the road may have moved over time.
And it,
That happens. I mean, we've had several of the roads in the township.
I've lived there for 30 years, I never saw it move.
It moves very slowly.
Well, I would like copies of your engineering, the thing that you proposed. I would like several copies of that. I would like for this to be in the record, that any of the dirt that's within that 20 feet is not to leave that property. You can move it anyplace else to make the swell, but it's not to leave. And the same way with the trees that you have to come down. They are on my deed, I want the trees. You take them down, they're still mine.
You want, if there's firewood, you want the firewood, is that what you're saying?
Yes, you better believe it.
Okay.
I would like to know whether the Philadelphia Electric Company knows that the poles that are there will be at the edge of the swell. Have you notified them? Is that okay with them?
Okay, give us your list of stuff, Mrs. Monto will respond to you.
Okay.
The engineer did the engineering work, and he did all the land work out there. We'll have to talk to him about what was done and what wasn't done.
Okay, well, what's the call? I don't have, my other question is, within, okay, I'll say 35 days, because I really didn't write it on a calendar, but less than 2 months. There were 2 sets of engineers out there. Why did we need 2 sets of engineers? I thought engineering was supposed to be a precise science. I don't get it. Why are we paying for 2 sets of road people out there making marks all over the place?
I have to question too how often they were there and what they were doing. I'll have to question that.
Well, we went out there and talked to them. One of them put stakes in, and the other one went around with a spray can.
Okay. Don't doubt you did.
I want to know why 2, and why are we paying for 2 engineering things?
We'll have to check with the engineer. We'll have to go over and get his bills, go over his bills with a fine-tooth comb.
Okay, and you will give me the names of the engineering company? And so that I can contact them whenever I have a question and I want copies of the map.
Are you going to pay for their time when you contact them on your behalf?
Yeah,
Okay. Better check their billing rate before you say that.
that's okay. I've had surveyors on my property. I know what it costs to have it surveyed.
Okay, just don't want you to be shocked, that's all.
Okay.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Jamie McVicker?
Are we talking just about the portion of Blackbush Road on the west side of 100?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Miss, I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Jane Altman.
Okay.
At the meeting 2 weeks ago, I believe you mentioned about right-of-way. You said something about older properties had, I believe it was 18 feet right-of-way.
That's properties that were never subdivided have a 16.5 foot from the center line of the road.
She wouldn't fall under that?
The engineer took it off the subdivision plans and the county records. That's how he came up with his meets and bounds to conduct the survey.
Because I don't believe we've been subdivided since
No,
1970, right?
yeah.
Okay, I don't know when it started. It's long before I was involved in the township. I know that it was.
Well, that's what I want the engineering, you know, so I can
Okay.
contact them and find out why everybody is different.
Okay, okay.
I've had that property way before 1970.
Okay, I don't know if 1970 signifies anything. I don't know if that, in this instance, I don't know if that date means anything or not.
I believe it does.
Okay, okay. And we'll check with the engineer. Any other comments or questions on Black Horse Road? Brian Curry.
Ken, do you remember when that road was paved?
Is it 13 or 14 years ago, 13 years ago?
Like 38.
Maybe
What's
I
that?
did it twice.
I'm sorry?
When Feathers did it the first time, it was close to 40 years.
Okay, well, it's done one since then.
Then it's been done about 4 years since then, our section, West Vincent.
Right.
In other words, the first time it was done, it lasted 40 years. Now, you people come along and chew it up, and it don't even last 2 years, and we're having all these problems. I'm sorry, but it doesn't make any sense
What do you mean it
to
didn't
me.
last 2 years? I don't understand.
He just said 14 years ago.
No, it was 40.
No, it was 14 years ago, 13 or 14 years ago, but I'm not sure, we'd have to check.
I think it's only really been done twice in the last lot of years. isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, and here's where I'm going with that question is, listening to the residents who live there, because I happened to attend that meeting, they mentioned that when it was initially paved, it had a poor base. What was talked about on a paving basis only was, it sounded like a very much improved base, with basically grinding up what's there, turning into a base, adding some more material and where necessary, and then putting down a good paving job on top of it. If we've had something that lasted from the initial of 40 years with one repaving that seems to have had some problems with it, do we really need to go and do the additional work? Is the poor base will go and have problems with water, and freezing and heaving, things like that. Do we really need to throw the extra $25,000 at it? I'm going to let the tree thing go because I know that on other jobs where the township road crew has been involved, when trees were involved, they were disappeared, and these people have already made the point that if there was a tree that has to be taken down on their property, they want to retain ownership of the tree after it's taken down. Last thing is, after that meeting on Tuesday, I went back and looked at the meeting minutes of the meeting where this was discussed the first time, where a motion was passed at that time and approved by the supervisors. And that motion was for the engineer to prepare a bid package to bid the work out. On Tuesday, at that meeting, Ken said that the road crew with, I guess, D&L Construction or whoever is going to be our new contractor is going to do the work. Somehow that...
No, it said D&L's going to do the swale work. And it looks like, and I think it's certain now, that Martin Payton from Lidditz is going to do the milling and the base repair and the paving.
Well, I still come back to the thing of, you had a motion to prepare a bid package, and now it sounds like we're going in a different direction without any revising motion or whatever the proper term is for it.
Okay. Your point is?
Well, if you go out and do the work yourself, and you've passed a motion that says one thing and you go out and do something in the future, why even bother with passing motions if you're going to do something different from what the motion said was going to happen?
Okay, well, do I listen to John and David, or do I listen to Brian Curry as Township Road Master? John and David, tell me what I should do. I would like to save the $75,000, but I know the residents are very concerned about the condition of the road. And they asked us to have it repaired, and we decided to get the engineer to look at it, come up with a plan, and give us a price to do it, and that's where we are today.
And there's also a motion on the floor. Motion made and seconded.
I don't have, well, going back to Brian's question, did we bid that, did we advertise a bid to do the job?
Didn't need to. It was under the bid requirements.
So I'm not sure if we, I know that what you're saying, Brian, but I don't remember everything we voted on or whatever, but, did you folks, did we vote to advertise a bid for this job?
If you did, but if it doesn't have to be bid, that seems like, a useless act.
Are we talking about a bid package or a set of specifications?
Be specific.
Well, they did a set of specifications so that a bid package could be prepared, yes, so.
But the specs basically were done, could stand by themselves.
Correct.
I understand your point, Jim, whether we may or may not have needed it because of the dollar value.
That's correct.
But if we voted on to advertise it, and we didn't advertise it, then
I don't know that that's, and I don't recall whether I was even here, but it sounds to me like you made a motion to have the engineer prepare the bid specs, not to, because then you would have reviewed those and made a subsequent motion to go out and advertise the bid. It's usually a two-step process.
and that makes more sense.
So,
I think Jim, or Steve, excuse me, Steve has basically said what happened is the motion said the engineer is to prepare it. You don't have to go out and bid on it. You've appointed the engineer anyway. It was probably less than $20,000 limit. That's fine. The job, and John, you asked about what the cost was, and the cost was $50,000 to $75,000. $50,000 to $75,000, I believe, is above the dollar value that you're supposed to bid that job out if you're going to have somebody do it.
It's your pleasure, you guys, do whatever you want to do.
Vote. Motion on the floor that approves the engineer's recommendation.
Could you read that motion back?
I don't think we have a
I
motion.
don't think we have.
I
know you both discussed what.
Ken, I think what happened is you interrupted the agenda and said the folks from Black Horse are here to talk about Black Horse Road, and you wanted to hear from them, but there wasn't a motion.
We did ask the other board members how they feel, and both of them feel that they could trust the engineer. I never had any.
There's no motion.
Then I just have a question on what Brian's saying. Paraphrasing you, Brian, you're saying if the project is $50,000 to $75,000, which apparently it is, correct? Then there should be a bidding process because of the work. I think that's what,
And the answer to that is no. You're talking about total project costs, so that would include materials that we're buying under the state contract. It would include township labor, and it would also include equipment and labor supplied by under the equipment and labor contract that the township has. So the remaining parts are under the state requirements that this must go out to bid, so it doesn't have to go out to bid.
okay. Does that answer your question, Brian?
I see Jim's logic. However, going back to the motion and what my reading of the meeting minutes, the motion at that time was to prepare a bid package. You don't have a bid package. If you don't want to do a bid package, that's fine. Then pass a motion to change that.
So what do you guys want to do?
Well, we have the recommendations of Carroll Engineering. So I think we should go along with those recommendations at this point.
If it is, I'll second it.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
So what does that motion mean exactly, that?
We do have an engineering spec put out by Carroll Engineering.
Right.
And we want to follow it to get it completed. Which means doing, in paraphrasing, the paving work and the stormwater management part of it. If you're uncertain, why don't,
I'm not with her.
okay. So you agree that it should go on?
We should probably vote on the motion.
Yes.
So, is there a second?
Yeah, we already have a second.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Yes.
In other words, you're saying regardless of how the people on Black Horse Road feel, you're just gonna do it?
Don't look at me, look at all three of us.
I
One
am,
vote out
I'm
of
looking
three.
at all three of you.
Okay.
In other words, it doesn't matter to you how we live there, and we take
That's not so at all,
taxes,
Mrs.
and it means
Tomato.
nothing.
No, I looked at the road twice, 2 years in a row, and it's clear that there's water damage creating part of that problem. So,
No question.
and from my standpoint, that's part of what we're here for, is to correct that and make the road a 40-year road instead of a 14-year road.
I know that. But why did it last for years until you guys chewed it up?
Roads typically have a 40-year life. I mean, it's not what the rule of thumb is.
Well, 40 years is pretty long, but not really.
But that's, I've read that someplace, that is.
Wouldn't it be affected, the longevity of the surface, wouldn't that be affected by how heavily the road is used? And isn't Black Horse used as a cut-through?
Yeah.
Yes, that's
The
probably.
traffic's doubled or tripled there in the last 2 years.
Right.
Because the traffic backs up both in morning and night, and that's the crossroad. So that's why, whatever the foundation is, it's gotta be better than heavy.
Okay, I know that a couple of residents said the other night when we were out there that it's a shortcut for people from that part of Elkington Township. They come out there and go down 100 instead of go out Font Road, which is less stop
Or
signs.
many times during the school year, the traffic backs up from the Fellowship Road up to our road, and then cut across going down the Font, and then you cut in further on down up Font. So the traffic in the morning is extremely heavy.
Okay.
Plus, I'm gonna add, in front of our house, the school bus comes in there every day, and it's always early and parks. And I go out about 5 times a year to take the ruts out. And I think somehow they've gotta be kept out of there. If you put that swale in, they're gonna park in it, which is going to sink it, dig it up.
When the school bus parks alongside, do they sweep the trash out in the ditch?
Yeah, it does. mean,
I
it
know,
does.
that happens at my place.
And then the cars with the increased traffic.
Right.
There's gonna be a problem there, say, an
Right.
accident sometime.
Right.
Because the cars come across and all of a sudden the bus is there, and they can't see coming the other side. That's another issue. I'm most concerned about the swale, as you know. It's gonna take a lot of our property to put that in. And then as it goes on down through, basically this grass growing in there is all that's going to be there. If there was a way to have something more substantial, like half, I don't know what's called, a half pipe for lack of a better phrase. So it's more of a controlled flow of water there. I think that would be better once you lay that out. And you're putting in, from the plans you got, our driveway and both the Doc Hoffman's. I don't know how big the conduit is you're putting in, I couldn't tell from the plan.
I think it's 18 inches, I believe.
Is it 18?
At that end of the, I think Hoffman's is actually bigger than yours because it's
But there's more
further
water
down the
going
hill.
down there, so
Yeah.
that would make sense.
Yeah.
But I think in the middle there, I think there are going to be issues if there isn't more of a solid swale or
Right.
whatever.
The only thing I can do is rely on the engineer, and I think that's what the board is doing here, isn't that right?
No, there's a water issue, and we won't even
Right.
get into that.
Right.
That's got to be handled.
Right.
But I'm concerned the way, just putting grass on dirt, 2 stops on the school bus, and I'm blaming it on just that. It's not going to be there.
Right.
And then you've got ruts and everything else going
Right.
down through there.
Understand.
So I don't know what the issue, what can be done, or solution, or what can be done to, no, that's going to be an issue up front, unless somebody says to the school bus company, they can't do it.
Okay. Is that all, Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, the only thing was, if there's something more substantial, I think it would be better to have, as I say, a half pipe or some, more of a culvert rather than a swale.
Okay. Okay, Sue Miller had your hand up.
I did. I just want to caution the board, because many, many years ago, the township wasn't maintaining the roads the way maybe they should have been. This goes back years and years and years and years ago. So then what happened is that the township had to spend a lot of money to bring the roads back up to proper condition. And so, money has been spent, repaving roads, resurfacing, chipping them to catch up with that. And some of the discussion going on, I'm concerned that if we don't provide at least basic proper maintenance on the roads, that we could end up with further problems down the road. Further construction bills on the road. So I just know that you're taking each case seriously and considering it seriously, but if we continue to neglect the roads, it's gonna be more of an issue down in the future. And I understand the concerns about the swale. Maybe there's some, adjustment that could meet the needs of the residents a little bit better, I don't know.
Yeah, but see, I asked, who's gonna maintain the swale? And just like John has the school buses, I get these big ruts from trucks and I don't know what else, just the same as he does. If the township is responsible for maintaining the road, why aren't they responsible for maintaining the swale? They're the ones that are putting it in.
We are responsible for maintaining the swale.
That's not what you told me at that meeting.
I didn't think that we even addressed that at the meetings, Monta.
I think,
What you said was, if I don't mow with my lawnmower, how is it gonna get mowed?
Same thing.
And I said we'll mow with our highway mowing machine, that's how we'll mow it.
If there's ruts there, that's what's gonna happen.
Okay, Maria Jacobs is next.
You know-
Maria Jacobs is next, Mr. Palante, I'm sorry.
He can have the floor.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Palante.
You know, after you fix this road, it's gonna be a speedway.
I know that.
Okay, now, do I have to give him permission to park in my driveway to catch him?
You don't have to give him permission, you can ask him to come out, so.
I already gave him permission to park in my driveway.
Right.
Go on out at any time.
Right.
I mean, even with that washboard they're running.
Okay, Maria.
I agree with what Sue said, that we need to take care of our roads. My question is though, because I'm kind of confused, we put out specs, the engineer put out specs, but we're not going to put it out to bid to a company that we would have some fallback position, or actually get what it would cost that company to do it, like another company that has another layer of insurance, another layer of guarantee responsibility. We're just going to do it in-house, and, I just am wondering, for a $75,000 project, maybe you don't have to put it out to bid, but wouldn't it be prudent to put it out to bid so we really know what we're looking at?
Well, the company that's doing the milling and the paving and is given the price, they are going to be bound by bonds, by performance and maintenance bonds.
But wouldn't you want to take that, if it's a $75,000 project, that's a big project with material and everything. Why wouldn't we put that out to bid? And just, who's the company that's going to do it?
I don't care if it goes out to bid or not. It doesn't matter to me if it goes out to bid or not.
I just would ask the supervisors to consider, let's do it the right way. It's a big project and it's an important road in the township. And we should make sure that we're doing it all correctly with performance bonds and things. And, once you start layering, well, this company's doing this, and then we're doing that, and then this company's doing that, those performance bonds start to become very, very iffy in how you get that, well, whose fault is it if something goes wrong? So I would just like to, to suggest that we do go out to bid.
I have a question. Is there any residents on Black Horse Road that would like to see this project go forward?
Like to what?
Would like to see it go forward in its entirety?
Well, we could do nothing at all. That would suit me fine because that would cut $75,000 out of the road expenses for this year. So, that'd make everybody happy that doesn't want to spend
Definitely vote
any.
against that. My car wouldn't take another year.
I understand that. And you have to remember that we understood the condition of the road and we responded to the residents' concerns about the road too. That's one of the reasons why we went forward with the projects, because the residents of that portion of Black Horse Road wanted us to do that, to improve the road.
And it's also a liability issue. We get notices from people about the potholes on that road, and we're required to make sure that that road is safe for not just residents, but for the general public to travel on.
Yeah, even to walk on.
So, the last two winters did a huge amount of damage to that road.
If you're gonna bring up my building issues, then why are we forcing all the water out on 100? You're forcing water out there that an 18-inch pipe is never gonna handle. I don't think you understand the amount of water that comes off. You're draining that whole side of the hill. That's a river, not something an 18-inch pipe's gonna handle. It's gonna go right out on 100 and flood 100. Now you're gonna have an accident on 100.
The township
I think you
engineer,
look at that.
sized the pipe and he took the drainage area. They have calculations for that with the slope and the acreage and the rainfall. That's his number. It's not township's number. It's the engineer's number.
No, I've seen, it's a river. It's not something a pipe handles. It's that much water comes off that hill.
Okay.
What, would it help if we delayed that motion or withdrew it and brought Carroll Engineering out next meeting and explain his findings to the residents?
Yeah, it's okay with me.
So driving the cost of the project up again.
And also trying to get it right.
Could a suggestion that somebody break down the various materials and tasks and who is proposed to do them? Because that may mitigate the concerns about going out to bid based on a breakdown of what actually, each of the components would be.
Okay. Okay, I know the numbers off the top of my head, but I don't know the exact numbers, so I'd be hesitant to say them tonight.
Right, so if we have it available, that might help.
Okay.
So why don't we delay this?
Is this going to delay the work?
Yeah.
I mean, for what? For effort?
Well, the guy that's on the milling and the paving has it on his schedule for the last week in August.
Okay.
But if we, I don't know if just move it back for a week or 2 weeks or whatever. He would be the one, I guess, that company would be the one that would be the scheduling problem.
The driving factor.
Yeah, yeah, because we're working backwards from his date
Right.
to start the rest of it.
The issue, something has to be done. It's not telling you don't do anything.
Okay, Mr. Volk?
Well, what I want to say is, what's the matter with doing the road first, have a good contractors, they're going to do a good job, and get the road done, okay? Now you're going to save, what, how many thousands of dollars? To just do that, okay? Then, as time goes on, and I don't mean a lot of time, but some time, and see what happens. Because I don't think there's going to be a problem on that road with water.
So it is.
Huh?
Ken, let me start off by
What's
saying,
going to go water to your house?
Not
Okay.
after I put the berm on.
Okay, hold on now, hold on. We don't need a neighbor conversation in the back row.
in keeping with our recent conversation on this, I'd like to withdraw my motion. Yes, and table this discussion.
Okay, so exactly what are we doing now?
There is no motion on the floor then, and we're going to rethink this at the next meeting and I would like to have Carroll Engineering here.
Okay.
And explain it to the residents, and then we can make an better informed decision.
Okay. Okay, Kit, kind of hand up for a while.
Just a couple questions for you, and maybe this will help the residents feel a little better about it. But do you recall who engineered the job that was done on Sheeter Mill Road?
Castle Valley.
Okay.
Or no, Carroll
It
Engineering.
was
I'm
Carroll
sorry.
Engineering,
Yeah.
okay. And this was done, it was done sometime in the last 10 years, but it's been several years at least. And I know there was a lot of concern with that, and there's an awful lot of water that runs down there because it comes from the top of where Half Hill comes down, the right word, and goes all the way down. It's a big, big hill. There's a lot of water issues, and they did engineer it, and you went forward and you did the work. I don't recall if the township road crew did the work or someone else did, Ken.
Road crew did it with the assistance of the road contractor.
Okay.
You know, the one that we.
Excellent job. It truly took care of the problems that were going on that road. The road was falling apart, huge ditches on the side, and I kept saying, a truck's gonna put one wheel in there, and they're going over, and actually, a UPS truck did get stuck, it was backing out of the driveway, it went in, he was stuck. And I will say that since it was done, it was a beautiful job. It was, and I had concerns, it seemed like it was a big thing. I think it was actually more blacktop than they'd be putting down, because I believe the swale part of that got blacktopped. It works. That's all. I just want to say that it works. You can have confidence that if it's the same engineer, which he says it is, and the same team doing it, it was done well, and it works the way it should. And there was a lot of water in that.
Okay, now, remember back in the beginning, I said that there's no existing stormwater pipes there, and
Right.
now state law precludes us from installing stormwater pipes or inlets with a discharge unless the property owner that receives the discharge gives us written permission to do it, and that includes an easement over that person's property for maintenance of the outlet, the swale where the water runs, and the property that would take that water, the owner declined to give us that permission, which is well within his rights, I understand why he did it. And that's why we have to revert to the grass swales, because we cannot put in inlets and pipes, because we don't have anywhere to discharge a pipe.
Okay, that makes sense, but I just think that they can trust the engineer, just I'm saying, because it was done very, very well.
Okay.
And so what we've decided tentatively is to have Carroll Engineering, to have Ken Yerger in here next meeting.
Ken will be here next meeting.
Right, well, somebody from Carroll.
Yes.
Well, that does move the whole project then. Because you
Yeah.
you have 2 weeks.
Yeah.
At least.
Any danger of it being canceled, moved to next year?
I don't think so, but I don't know. You know, if the paving company that gave us, the Million Paving Company that gave us the written price for it, if they can't do it, we could probably look for somewhere else, for somebody to do it. Brian Kearney, hand your hand over.
You made the statement that Carroll Engineering had done the calculations for how much water is coming down the hill, et cetera. And, you know, at those meetings, the residents were, you know, stating, my God, I had a river going down my driveway. And the various residents have put up berms on their property, either in the right-of-way or outside the right-of-way, to divert the water that then comes down the road, so it, you know, at least goes somewhere where it's not detrimental to their property. The question I have is, are those calculations from Carroll Engineering available so that the residents could go and at least get some feel for, okay, they assume that we're going to have 4 inches of rain in 6 hours and this will handle it, or, you know, at least give some confidence that it's really going to, you know, deal with the water issue. Are those calculations available?
I'm sure they are. So there'll be a chart in the work that Carroll did that reflects those numbers.
Is that something that's in the township's possession, or does Carroll hold that?
I think it probably would be available to us if we asked for it, but Carroll has it in their files, in their West Vincent files for Black Horse Road repair.
Okay.
That's generally the way it works. So, okay. Sarah Schick.
Actually, I think that whole row, Sharon, Richards, and Davey were ahead of me, but they got bored. About the performance bond, do you have that on the, whatever you're doing, digging it up and scarifying and stuff?
Yeah.
And how long is a performance bond good for?
Performance bond is good for until the work's done.
Until the work's done.
Yeah.
So when Maria's suggesting a performance bond, does that really make any difference to
Well,
us?
then there's also,
suggesting
no, there's
performance bond.
a maintenance bond too.
Oh, okay.
That
And then-
the contractor guarantees the work for either 18 months or 24, depending on how I do. We usually go for 24 months.
Yeah, we try for 24. but
Okay, so
usually they offer it.
this contractor you have in mind to do that preliminary surfacing work, that already has that sort of a bond in it?
Yeah, it's not in place, but in
But
his
it's-
estimate, it is a bonded job.
So it's part of that already?
Yes.
Okay, I'm concerned about the implications about the quality of the road crew work, because I have seen the work that they did on the road at my house, and I don't have any concerns about them, and they were very careful and communicated very well with us when they were gonna block the driveway and stuff like that. And so, I just wanted to understand more about that.
Well, there's no resident of Black Horse Road is concerned about the quality of work that the road crew do. That's not their issue. That's
Well,
a-
and none
that's
of them are
another
really
issue.
worried about the effectiveness of the swale, they're just worried about the existence of the swale.
Well, both. I think both. They have legitimate concerns, and we'll get them the answers. It's not the end of the world. We'll start next week. So.
And
Yes,
the
Mr.
road's
Wolf.
not going anywhere.
Between now and then, it probably won't move an inch or so.
You're home tonight, you're gonna find your way in.
It could get worse. It's moving, okay?
Okay, Brett.
Thank you for bringing Carroll Engineering in at the next meeting. And when we do that, can we also have the information you're going to provide about the different components, including the, labor materials?
Yeah.
And how the labor is calculated?
Yep. Yeah, they have, and then I have our estimates too. Everything else, that's right. Okay, Mr. Volpe.
When you when you go to do your bidding, or however you do it, do all of you know the best people to go after and to do a job correctly?
We rely on the township engineer who reviews, who prepares the work, and if it goes out to bid, they review all the bids, and they know the contractors that do the work. But again, we're required by state law to take the lowest bid unless we disqualify the contractor, and that's a difficult process to do.
Okay. Anything else on Black Horse Road? Well, John, you're wrong, it's not over by 8:30.
It was a good guess.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the first item on our old business is to award the equipment and labor bid. Jim, you reviewed the documents?
Yes, we reviewed the documents, and we're recommending that the one bidder, D&L Construction LLC, be awarded the equipment and labor contract. I believe it goes from the end of July 2015 to the end of July 2016.
And this was the only bid?
Correct.
Can I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any comment? Brian Curry.
Question for you, in the form that's being filled out, the MS 970 PennDOT form, it says that on page 3, that all the columns E through H are to be completed. Was column H completed on the bid submitted?
Was it, Jim?
Off the top of my head, I don't remember, but we reviewed all the contract documents.
Well, the reason I ask is, those numbers establish what the maximum value of the contract is. And I believe
Which is $300, I believe, times the rate.
What's that again now, Tim?
Which is $300, I believe, times the rate.
For a number of different pieces of equipment.
That's correct.
Okay, and so the question becomes, how do you set the performance bond if you don't know what the maximum value of the, and I could be wrong on that term. I've got a problem because I don't have the paperwork in front of me. But there is a bond value there, I believe, of 10% of what the value of the contract is. So what does the value of the contract end up being?
That's all calculated out off the top of my head. I don't know what that is right now, but the amount that's put up by the contractor is the amount that's put up in prior years, and it's the amount that's been satisfactory to the township.
So are you saying that the amount that's been put up in prior years has been that 10% or whatever the percentage value is of the maximum value of the contract?
That's correct.
Okay. I've got one other question here. In the advertisement for it, the advertisement says, however, to the extent that a contractor is directed to perform work other than maintenance work, and to the extent that such work is determined to be subject to the Pennsylvania Prevailing Wage Act, the bidder shall be required to pay the prevailing wage rates determined for the project area for all workmen in accordance with the Pennsylvania Prevailing Wage Act, as shall be reflected on the bid form. Where is the Pennsylvania Prevailing Wage Act information reflected on the bid form?
I don't have the bid in front of me. Usually usually that information is attached to the bid form.
Well, the reason I ask is because I downloaded the bid packet, and it didn't have anything about prevailing wage rate acts that I've seen before, and I have seen that in bids or other documents for the Horseshoe Trail, say, where it had this extensive list of wage rates, but we don't have it in this contract for some reason, it seems.
I will have to research that and get back to you.
Okay.
Other comments? Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next item, number 11, is stone facing for Eagle Farms culverts.
Skip one.
10.
Number 10, I'm sorry, resolution number 14 of 2015, which is PennDOT traffic signal approval.
And all this is for the sidewalk along the north side of 401, which connects Lexington Boulevard to the school. PennDOT is requiring us to have a resolution because there needs to be a minor change to the traffic signal at that location. The button which activates the traffic signal needs to be moved. So they're asking that that be on the plan and that we have a resolution authorizing us to make that change.
Move so the children can reach it.
Presumably. It's just moved.
It's low to the ground now.
It's low to the ground now. It's
It has
just
to be
the
on a different
location just needs to be moved.
So, resolution 14 of 2015, a motion has been made and seconded. Any comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Next is a stone facing for Eagle Farms culverts. I thought we had made a motion on how we wanted this done, John, last time. Is that right? Didn't we approve a motion about the stone facing and where it went on the culverts on Eagle Farms Road?
I don't think we did. I thought it was still an open area.
Well, this is the response.
I don't think there was a motion. I think there was a discussion, and based on that discussion, I contacted counsel for the developer to convey what the board was requesting on behalf of the residents, which was actual stone facing on the culverts, and this is their response to that, which is to put stone facing on all sides of the culverts, with the exception of one side which is not visible, as well as the interior of the culvert, and then to provide landscaping to ensure that there's some buffer from that area that's not stone faced.
I'd like to hear the residents for that last face being missing, because I believe it was mentioned at an earlier meeting that it calls for everything to be stone faced.
Yeah, this will help. This is not an option, this was what was agreed upon, and this is the conditional use. So you guys can take a look, but it specifically states that every inch of that's going to be covered. And it actually also states that the walls can't be more than 5 feet tall, and they're 7 or 8 feet tall. So what Toll is offering is unacceptable, according to the conditional use documentation.
This would have been over, and there's a difference of opinion as to whether the stone facing is required of retention walls versus culverts.
They're one and the same, and we sent you documentation from Google of what a culvert looks like.
I don't rely on Google.
It states it, a culvert is a
I don't
retaining
rely
wall.
on
Okay, hold on now, Jamie, understand that John and I want natural stone veneer on all 4 sides of the culverts.
Okay.
David wasn't at the meeting, he didn't weigh in on it.
I think the conditional use speaks to the fact that.
I don't care what the conditional use says, I'm speaking to this exact situation that we've been talking about for a long time. And
I know.
think that
We
we
wanna get it.
arrived at the same place at the last meeting. Ron, you were here, isn't that what
Yeah.
we
Okay.
said?
I'm confused on who's on first. Is the conditional use relevant in this whole discussion?
Yes.
Then my understanding from the discussion was that from day one, this was supposed to be stone. In all the verbiage we've been through, no industrial strength slabs of concrete, native natural stone, all of those references. And we've been all over, this is exactly what they did in their development. And we didn't get it. Now, the letter that we saw today was, we don't have to do this, but we'll be nice guys and do it on 3 sides, was the tone I picked up.
That's their position, yes.
And I guess my question is there one part that has a final say in this? Or what about the references that you gentlemen have made about they have to pass ownership of the culverts over to you, or the township, and it has to be acceptable to you? It was my understanding that you had a veto power of, no, that's not what we agreed to.
It's not a veto power, we just don't accept it.
And they want to get rid of it. They want it off their liability.
And eventually, it ends up in court someplace.
And by the way, the wall that they say that you can't see is still visible when you walk down the road. So why would they do that to the residents they're gonna sell houses to and just skimp it? Why don't you just do it? And I know you guys.
We
I know
can't
you
answer
agree.
that one, Jamie, I don't know.
I mean, we've been talking about this for months, so.
Is it a situation where we could say, yeah, we'll agree to the three sides, and we're going to fight the fourth side? And prolong that? Where are we, I guess, is my question.
Before I answer that question, let me ask Steve a question. In reading this, the height, just real quick, and I'm not an attorney, oh, that's not the one.
Turn the page.
But it says, their copy of this says it shouldn't be any higher than 5 feet, and your measurements calculate 7 and 8 feet?
Yeah, just one out there tonight did it.
I don't doubt that, I'm not trying to be argumentative, but things are always, from one vantage point or another. That, to me, could be one that maybe they have, using a different way of coming up with that, okay? Is that something, and I'm just asking, that you could live with the 7th or 8th if all four sides were covered?
Yes. But, and again, like, we're not, all we want is it to be natural stone facing.
And we want what you want.
But, I know you do, but the developers just want to get this over with.
Developers, that's their
And they've
job.
already gone into the Ewing property beyond what they should have.
That's the point I was just...
So, they've already overstepped their bounds, and the Ewings accepted it. Now they've made them higher than they should, and we're ready to accept that. So, we're gonna stop accepting this stuff, and I know you guys will stand behind us, but somebody has to tell them, no, this has to be stone facing, and that's that. So, where do we go from here with you guys?
Additional question. The letter today had reference to native natural stone of our choosing being told. Can we develop some type of conversation so we have some input? Because that comes down to how are you going to define native natural stone? And my thought is, of course, it has to look like fieldstone. Maybe they've got something entirely different. So could we at least have a rapport about what we're going to have to look at? And Steve, I was unaware of what you just mentioned of shrubbery blocking some of the stuff. That's the first I've heard of that.
In the conversation that I had, they suggested that they would landscape any area that was even remotely visible. But they were of the opinion that one of the sides was not at all visible, and it was a waste of money, and goes beyond their obligation.
Now, does that, let's assume that it was acceptable that they weren't going to do the south side of Eagle Farms Road. Does that mean they'd put stone on the inside of the south side and go over the top?
I think that going over the top had already been discussed, and that wasn't an issue, so that it would go over the top and cover a short portion of the outside.
So the issue comes down to, can anybody see the south side of Eagle Farms Road?
Pretty much, yeah.
And other than that, it's anything that's concrete now is going to have stone on it.
That's my understanding.
But doesn't that paperwork say that they have to cover every side of it?
I don't read it that way. They don't read it that way.
How do you read it that's different than how I read it?
I read culverts as being different than retaining walls in terms of plain language. I have to take a conservative look at this. And it's not funny, because the litigation over the issue, which, if you read this letter, they've not committed to anything. And no, you're not going to be able to, in my view, fight over one wall and get the 3 walls accomplished. So, and the way they structured the letter is they said, we would reserve the right to withdraw it at any time. So the next step from my perspective would be develop that dialogue, see if we can get comfortable with the stone, see if we can get comfortable with the type of stone, indigenous stone, see if we can get comfortable with the landscaping. Is that going to actually serve as a buffer? Are you actually going to see anything that's, on that, is it the south side?
Yes.
And then try to get a commitment out of them. Another alternative would be to say, no, we're not accepting this, and then the township has to make a decision as to whether it wants to litigate the issue and spend, what do you want to call it, $75,000 for an outcome that's not certain. And that's really where we are.
Would it help if we showed you the research on what defines a culvert and how it does retain the land?
I've done that research.
Okay.
I've done that research. And what we have in the law is, language that says, you apply the plain meaning and the limited construction. And if you meant culvert, you had the ability to say culvert. We also know that we looked at a number of other locations within the development that do not have stone facing on them. So they're operating consistent with the way they've been operating. Those aren't in West Vincent necessarily, so I'm not sure that this conditional use would even apply there, but they're operating consistently.
Have they looked at the cost of the stone on 3 walls versus 4?
Yes.
What's the difference in price?
I didn't ask.
Okay. Will they have a meeting with us to discuss this with us?
I don't know.
Because you and I can keep going around and deciding what a culvert is and what a retaining wall is. And I know what you're talking about is those stepped up retaining walls, but a culvert does retain land and it
A
holds
culvert
it
does
back.
retain land, but a culvert is not a retaining wall. It has retention components to it.
It's a form of a retaining wall.
No, a retaining wall is a retaining wall. A culvert has retention components to it, but it is not technically a retaining wall.
Okay, so how are they going to defend the fact that the walls are too tall?
I don't know. I didn't get into
Could
that
we
issue.
tell them to remove them and
First
shrink
time
them down to 5
First time I've
feet
heard that
tall?
issue is tonight, and if the walls are too tall on the Ewing property and the Ewings have accepted it, it seems like the aggrieved party is not interested in doing battle on that issue.
I don't know if you said they accepted it or not, but the walls are too tall.
I heard you say that they had accepted it earlier.
No, when they came into their property too far, they dug in, they
accepted that
developed
portion.
that. They didn't even know it. We told them that they did,
I
because it said it in the paper.
don't think it's correct to say they accepted it. I thought they were still going to go back to the developers and say, wait a minute, you took some of our land.
I misunderstood what he said. He said they accepted it. He was saying they accepted the encroachment. Maybe there were
Right,
negotiations with them.
They just went too far, and the Ewings didn't realize it, but nonetheless, the walls are too tall. So I would hope you, on our behalf, would say, listen, you guys have already violated the conditional use, so spend the extra money to cover the 4th wall, and you've got happy customers who will stop them and bother them.
Well, first off, I don't know enough to do that. I don't know how they're measuring those 7-foot heights, whether that's, or how you measured them, whether that's from, something that's below grade because it's exposed, or whether it's from grade. So before I go out there and take a stance, I need to have some facts on that.
Well, maybe we should go out, because it goes down like a hill because it goes to a stream. So I took it from the top edge to the bottom that you can see, and it's 7 feet tall. You could take it from the middle, or you could take it from the top, and it'll be like 2 feet. But the sheer height of the wall is over 7 feet tall.
That would be something for Ken Yerger to address, not me.
We want you guys to support us, and I know the board does. You're having a problem supporting us?
Well, I'm not having any problem. I'm just telling you that I
Why can't
have
you-
to, when I advise the board, I have to take a conservative look as to what are the potential outcomes and make sure they're aware. And from where I sit, it's not open and shut. And that's, I'm safeguarding your money, our money, resident money. So that's the approach that I have to take.
All right, well, I still don't understand why you don't believe a culvert is a retaining wall, and why it couldn't be armed. But
Let me ask you this, if you go to a dictionary and you look up retaining wall, does it say culvert? If you go to a dictionary and you look up culvert, does it say retaining wall?
You Google what is a culvert.
No,
it'll show you the
I'm not
lengths
talking
of
about
the wall.
Google, I'm talking about Webster's.
Well, I think most people here rely on Google to give them the right information.
I don't.
You don't? Okay,
No.
that's interesting.
But you can understand the point that a case, sounds to me, a case could easily be made.
I'm not trying to take this to
No, I
court,
know
John.
you're not, but that's where we're gonna have to put ourselves in to make that decision. That's why I asked you, is stone facing with locally grown stone, I know it's not grown, but stone, is that important enough to do battle and have all 5 sides? And you told me yes, okay? Then I asked, is a 7 to 8 foot, could you live with that? And I think you said yes, but I'm not sure. So
Yes.
what that would leave us to be is to have one last meeting, go around at this, and let Steve say, this is how the board feels. I know how Ken feels, well, I believe I know how Ken feels, so I'm moving forward. And David, and we're behind you. I mean,
I know.
whatever.
Could we have, like, a toll representative has come to these meetings before, could we have her come back?
They don't always answer to what we want.
No, I mean, we can ask. You guys sound like you're gonna err on the side of caution. Steve's telling you to be cautious and that a culvert is not a retaining wall. And so that we're gonna have to basically kowtow to their desire to just do 3 walls.
Just in your estimation, is that how this should work? Have one last meeting and put the cards on and say, this is, we're gonna back the rest of
If
it.
that's what you wanna do, then.
I think where we are, what I've heard is where we are, is that you neighbors are willing to accept the 7-foot walls if you get 4 sides acceptable stuff.
I mean,
right?
I'm speaking for myself and my wife, Ron.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where I'm getting lost is if a portion of the culvert is there for the purpose of retaining. Now, that's not a retaining wall?
Their position is, if you meant culvert, you should have said culvert. And that'll be their legal position. So I have to look at that legal position and say, do I feel lucky? Or do you feel lucky? And that's not what I do. I look at it and say, what is the outcome conservatively? How much is it going to cost to litigate that issue? And are we going to win or are we going to lose? And what are the chances? And I think it's a tough call, because I think if you look at engineering decisions and land use decisions, there's clearly the language culverts is used when you want to use culvert, and the language retention wall is used when you want to use retention wall, and they're not necessarily interchangeable. But I do agree that culverts have a retention component to them, and I argued that the spirit and the intent of this was stone facing. And we got 3 out of 4 sides, or 4 out of 5 sides, stone. 3 out of 4 with indigenous stone now. And I got a lot of pushback on the 4th. I got a lot of pushback on indigenous stone. But we got the indigenous stone.
Okay, then for the next step, can we have a meeting so we discuss it with them and you all, and discuss exact plans? Okay, if our worst case scenario is that wall is going to be plain, then what is going to happen on that wall?
Now, your worst case scenario is you get nothing, and we have to litigate the issue. And then your worst case scenario is we lose the issue and you get nothing. Your best case scenario is they agree to everything, stone on all sides. What they've proposed is 3 of the 4 sides indigenous stone, and they'll landscape. Well, it's not in the letter. They said that they would landscape to ensure that the one side, the south side, was not visible. That's where we left off. What I would want, for my own benefit and edification, is an understanding of this height issue. And not, I trust you got out there with a measure, but I need the engineer to give me that information from an engineering perspective to say how far out of compliance with the plan are we, so I understand that. And then it seems to me the next issue would be, can we have a discussion on the nature of the indigenous stone so that you're all comfortable that their idea of indigenous stone is your idea of indigenous stone, and we get that out of the way. And then that would leave the 4th side. And then we have to weigh our options at that point.
Here's the way it seems to me. You're talking, Steve, about the risks of litigating and the possibility of losing. That same risk, if the question is as dicey as you think it is, as you say it is, toll has the same risk, don't they? So if that's the case, how strong can their position be if they say 3 but not 4? I mean, shouldn't there be some room in there to push? I'm not second guessing. I'm talking just about the fourth side, Steve. And basically, if we can get information that they have apparently exceeded the height thing, and the neighbors are willing to give on that, is that a bargain?
What I'm going to suggest is I'm going to refrain on giving legal advice or guidance or, my insight into that issue. I've just framed the two sides for you, but I'm really not going to give the legal guidance on the issue here.
I was saying, don't they have risk as well? Doesn't Toll have risk as well from the uncertainty?
Sure.
And doesn't that give us some kind of bargain?
I think there's risks on both sides.
Right.
To quantify them is a different issue.
So we're talking about.
He's got his hand.
Larry Westfall.
Just a comment, if the wall, and I don't know the wall, and I assume it's CMU's concrete masonry block right now, is 7 feet tall and it's only supposed to be about 5 feet, ask them to go out and take a masonry saw and cut 2 feet off. Now you've reduced the area that they have to cover with stone on 3 sides, and that might give them enough to cover the 4th side, and everybody wins.
Do we have an estimate of the square footage of that south side, so we can put a number? Because there's somewhere in the area of $15 a square foot for putting stone on. Now, if we're throwing around numbers of each side has to spend $75,000 in legal work, I think the cost of stone is a hell of a lot cheaper than that. So is there some common ground we can talk about here to split?
I think we need to push for one last meeting with all parties and get it out and let them know where the supervisors stand on this, and hopefully they'll agree to
You're
it.
suggesting, I think, John, and I agree with you, I agree with you. The meeting should be not just Steve, the neighbors, and Toll, it should be the 3 of us as well.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I agree.
I mean, if they know that we're solidly behind them on 4 out of 5 sides, or I don't mean it that way, 4 out of 5 issues, then maybe they'll just roll over on that last one just to be done with it. So, but I think if we're all there, we have a better shot at ending it in one last meeting.
Why don't we just tell them that we want stone facing on all 4 sides? Isn't that what everybody wants? Well, then why waste their time with a meeting?
Because sometimes being face-to-face makes it a little easier to agree. And it shows that we really mean it rather than sitting in a board meeting on a Monday evening and taking a vote.
Well, let me just suggest this, if you don't want to have a special meeting with all 3 supervisors, you could have one, therefore you don't have a quorum, and you could just have one supervisor attend the meeting, to convey what you believe are the sentiments of the supervisors. It might make it easier to schedule.
I don't think that does what we want. What we want is to show that all 3 of us are together.
Well, then just have your attorney draft a letter that the board has unanimously decided that they want stone facing on all the sides, period. Let's see where it goes.
Wasn't that the motion last meeting, and you voted on that? Didn't the board already vote on that?
I thought we did, but obviously we didn't.
No, okay, you're saying you didn't, okay.
I agree with David that it's much more
Yeah,
impactful if you're all there.
We waited until tonight to
Okay.
decide that.
I think
So make
the
that
motion
motion.
was the turnaround.
Okay. All right.
If all 3 of you are there, does that make an official meeting?
Yeah.
Yes.
You've got to
They have to
have
advertise it.
Advertised on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, if they're willing to put up the stone on 3 sides, what would it cost to just have somebody, we've got lots of stonemasons around here, just go in and put the stone on the 4th side?
Well, why spend our money when we get them to do it?
Well, I understand, but it seems to me sometimes.
Right,
It's
yeah,
done.
you gotta look at the cost benefit.
Yeah.
How much of our money are we spending?
Rather than
Right.
lawsuits.
Have Steve be a stonemason instead of a litigator.
Costs just as much probably. Suzanne, Roth.
I just wanted to, in all this discussion, you've talked about having Ken Yerger, our engineer, go and measure the wall and make sure that it's correct height according to the specifications, and I didn't want that to get lost.
Okay.
That would be part of the normal review anyway, I believe.
So we're going to schedule a meeting with Toll Brothers, the residents, supervisors, at a public meeting, especially for that purpose, is that right? Okay. When do you want to do it?
Why don't we do this? Why don't I contact them and see if they will attend that meeting first, rather than go through the cost of advertising it. If we can, you want to work it into one of these meetings, a regular meeting? Ask them if they will attend the next one? Or would you prefer a dedicated meeting?
I prefer a dedicated meeting, if the idea is to focus specifically on that one.
So why don't I reach out, see if I get some dates, and then we'll coordinate with Jim.
Right.
And Steve, maybe if you can, in talking to Allison, if you can convince her that we're pretty damn serious about this, all three of us are.
I did.
Okay, so that's where we are on that.
I did convey that.
Okay. Understand, Jamie and Ron, where we are?
I think so.
Okay.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, is that all in on that? Ron?
Same church, different pew. Is the reconstruction of the road still scheduled for this year? Because I remember the 60-degree low temperature date.
It is. They are working hard to get the roads in the Eagle Farms development ready for dedication so the school buses can run on those roads. They put that ahead of the Winchester Springs Road at our request, actually, so that it'd be ready for dedication or close to dedication at time when school starts. It's going to be really close, I know that, so.
Okay. That does it for me.
Okay. Okay, next item on the agenda is police
Thank you.
investigation. You're welcome. Jim?
This is, the only issue I believe that's left is whether or not the board wants the entire contents of the investigation released as opposed to the summary that it has released.
My own opinion is that we should release the entire report. I realize that there are differing opinions on that. I think that in a situation like this, where serious charges have been brought against township employees who are also public safety officers, that we owe it to the public to make that report available.
Well, since you gave your opinion, I'll give mine. I am 100% behind the way the police investigation was written, make no mistake about that. But I'm opposed to releasing it for two simple reasons. One, the residents' actions prevented further damage to that tree. And Verizon did make a mistake. They didn't follow their own rules and they sent somebody out. And third reason is, I find it, no benefit's going to come from us releasing this report and sticking our finger in those residents' eyes. It just, they're residents, they're taxpayers. We adopted the report and I think we should just let that stand.
I would respond that in releasing the report, we're not sticking our fingers or thumbs in anyone's eye. We're just releasing a report that we paid for with taxpayer money. And we're not characterizing anything. We're just saying, here it is. This is what the investigation was supposed to do. This is the conclusion. Here it is. I respect your decision.
I understand that, David, but it's not going to be a period. It's going to invite more, and it's going to go on. And I just don't think, in my opinion, I'm not saying I understand your point. I'm just, that's where I am.
Okay. You want to make a motion, David?
I move that we release, that we publicize and release the police investigation conducted by Sienna Belmore and Gander as soon as convenient.
Site with the video of the event?
Including the video.
John, I would assume you're going to second that?
I'd rather not.
Okay, I'll second that. Is there any comment?
I have one.
Yes.
There are certain elements of both the video and the report that are going to have to be redacted. There's private information, citizens' information, things like that, that will have to come out of that, both pursuant to the laws regarding the body cams and the video recordings, as well as the video and recordings, as well as some of the privacy laws. So that's just gonna be a little work that has to be done before don't expect it to appear on the website tomorrow, is really what I'm saying.
Well, certainly I accept your redaction, Steve.
Okay, any comments? Jamie?
Yeah, I was there that day. Does the body cam stay on the whole time, or just when they're outside the car? I'm curious about procedure.
I don't know.
John?
I believe it's just when they're outside their car.
Okay. Because that's one of my issues with the report, is that when the officer was talking to me and he was sitting in his car, none of that was heard.
And also while they're in the private residence. They cannot-
Sure, okay. So,
Okay. John?
I missed part of that. Is the recommendation of the motion now to include video?
Yeah.
I would be hesitant to do that at this time unless we had a general policy, and I don't know if there's one exists, as to how police cams, video cams, are going to be used and when material will be made public. I think there are going to be a lot of situations that are going to occur over time which are going to be embarrassing or whatever. If the parties can see it, video, in private, I think that's one thing. But I think releasing video to the general public is more voyeurism than really contributing information.
I would answer that, John. I respect your position. But having seen the videos, I think it's important that the public, I mean, accusations have been made publicly against the police, or characterizations, I should say. And I think we've made up our mind based on that. And I think the public has the right to see why we decided what we did.
Well, my proposal was that we ought to have a general policy in place before we do that. Is this going to be precedent setting? I don't know how it's going to be looked at in the future. I don't see any harm in taking some time to consider whether we need policies on how these videos are going to be used in the future. And at a later time, if we say, okay, we're comfortable with this, we can release this particular videotape. But I think we should step into this very carefully.
Okay, Sarah is next.
Yeah, my question was the mechanism for releasing it, and so it would be posted on the website, is that?
I don't know.
And does it include the original complaint? Does the report include, this is the complaint that came in that we were responding to? Because I heard an impassioned story tonight from the Helms, and so I'd like to know what was it that initiated the investigation? So if that is not a part of the result, the report, I'd like to have that included with the release so that the whole picture is there.
Okay. Okay, Brian, had your hand up?
One is, it looks like we're going to be spending more money in this area. Steve may have some feelings or knowledge in this area, in that body cams, there's a real rapid adoption of them now. And I suspect that there's a lot of discussion and probably case law in the process of development on body cams, releasing information. Is that a true statement, Steve?
That is a true statement.
So if we come up with a policy, it still may be in a real state of flux because of what's going on with respect to them in the larger legal field. It could be tough coming up with the West Vincent policy and making it firm and stick forever.
Well, taking that statement, I think what John's suggesting is a policy. I agree that we should have a policy. I do not think that we should delay the release of the report until we have such a policy. I think we release the report and then commit ourselves to putting together a policy, a very thoughtful policy about it.
I'm not sure a policy is required at all. If we make an individual decision on an individual circumstance the way it happened, then that could be the exact thing we're looking for. It doesn't preclude any of our options then. And it doesn't end the debate, which is, in my opinion, good. Just because we disagree doesn't mean one of us is absolutely wrong. It's just a viewpoint. So I don't think we need a formal policy.
I think, and this is really not germane to the motion, but I think we should have a formal policy, only because at this point, we could be doing this on a whim, we're not, obviously, but I think you want something to set the limits of our discretion in terms of when we release it. But that's, again, that's not germane to the issue.
Any other comments? Kip, Todd?
Okay, just, obviously, there's two supervisors with opposite opinions, so Ken, I'm probably just talking to you. Because I think we both know how David and John are looking at this, but, so, I would just like to say that this has been a huge issue. We've obviously spent, is it up to $16,000 on this investigation and everything around that? There were accusations made against the police. I have no idea how this was, going, not being involved at all. And then there's articles in the paper, and then there was a statement read tonight that even it was a different light, but it made me think, well, how was the investigation handled if it was completely different than what the summary said? And so there's so many questions about it. I just think it's really important to have the entire thing released to the public. I don't know John's concerns about, whoever, not yours, who it's, might get hurt or might be sensitive about that, but I think we're way beyond that. I think that I think the police deserve this to be released so that we can see and understand. So.
Maria,
I guess I was wondering, what's the game? Wasn't there a vote for the summary to be made? Were you going to do this? I missed that meeting, but I understand there's a lot of conversation about whether we were having a summary or not. And then we paid legal counsel to write a summary, so I'm assuming the board did vote and agree on that. And I'm just really wondering, I think it's terrific that the tree was saved. I think that our police officers do a terrific job in our community. And I'm just really wondering what's to be gained by throwing this all out there. And someone said the word voyeurism, and I agree with that. I think that it just is a YouTube video. And I hate to see our township be brought through that.
The township was already brought through it when the accusations were made.
Yep.
This is vindication for the police.
They deserve that.
If that's true.
Oh, yes, Mr. Helms.
Well, I think the board should consider whether or not you want residents to step forward. I think it's an important topic in the United States right now, which is the executive branch overseeing activities of the police department. Now, we step forward as a resident. Yeah, okay, so you want to put us on the spot. You want to, characterize us in certain ways. I would hope that the board would want residents to come forward to the board. This wasn't our investigation. We asked you to look into it. You escalated that. That was your choice. That wasn't anything we asked you to do. So you made all the decisions. It was your investigation and your reports. I actually don't care if you release it. I do think you need to consider whether or not you want residents stepping forward to ask you whether or not you think this was right.
It's not.
I think the position I put out there was that I would expect that anybody who's party to a situation should have access to that video. I don't think we in the general public need to be second-guessing every decision that's being made. You paid for it, somebody to look into it, write a report. You as supervisors reviewed that report, reviewed the raw materials, you came up to a conclusion, you reported that conclusion. I don't think we need all the residents of West Vincent Township to start then second-guessing that whole process. Again, the principles to an issue or to a confrontation probably should have access to these videotapes. But I think there's just too much out there, YouTube and everything else. Privacy is being taken for granted wherever you look. And I just think that a good job, I can't say a good job was done, a job was done by the investigators who reviewed this situation, the Board of Supervisors who reviewed it, If the principals wants to go back and challenge something, they should do it on their own without engaging the whole township.
Okay, other questions or comments? Mike Schneider.
Do they have access to this report under a right to know? Do we have access?
Do you have access? Would that be right, Steve, or not?
No.
No.
No, you, under the current state of law, there's access to portions of the video without the audio, there's some redactions, based on a decision that's there now, going back to Brian Curry's statement about developing law on body cams and access to those videos. I suspect there's going to be a lot of legal activity on that issue, so I don't think it's going to be settled in the near future. I think there'll be restrictions and parameters placed on it. I do want to just respectfully go back to Mr. Helm and say this was an investigation that was done at your request as a resident, which you have the right to do. It was not, I think you made the statement, it was their investigation and they escalated it. No more was done in this investigation than had to be done in order to gather all of the facts based on all the people that were involved in it. And
Steve,
just
respectfully, we didn't ask for any of that. All we asked is that you look at the tape and make a decision whether or not you need to look at it further. And then you made a
I'm not going to respond, but I'm going to absolutely disagree with that characterization. And your complaint is in the report, so.
I would point out the way the summary starts, Steve. You might reread what you wrote.
I didn't write it.
Okay.
Just to be
all right.
clear.
So that's how the summary report starts, and it starts accurately.
Jamie McVicker?
Following up on the right to know question, you responded in terms of the body cam about the rest of the written.
Our position is that that is not a available document under the right to know request. It is not a public document. It's an administrative investigative report involving township personnel.
Okay. Chip?
Question, are the depositions that were taken, are they available under the right to know?
No, they would form a part of that investigation, that administrative investigation.
So then it would be correct to conclude that if this report is released, that would be redacted?
No. If they're making that decision, I think they're going to have to clarify what portions of the report, but the report consists of all the documentation, and the depositions are referenced, and there's specific reference made to those depositions, but not necessarily the transcripts. And then the question becomes, are the transcripts now going to be available to back the report based on who said what?
Okay, so final question. So if some of these portions, like the body cam and the depositions, are not available to us through right to know, the only access or partial access would be through the release of the report, is that correct?
Almost. Under the current state of the law, portions of the body cam videos are available under a right to know request. So that you would have. Everything else would be off limits. And the only way that you receive it is if they decide to put it into the public domain.
Okay. Any other comments? Yeah, Mr. Monaco.
Last meeting, woman sat up there and said she saw them cut down 1,000 trees. Police weren't called. We have one tree, police are called, we have a confrontation. Why?
It's a whole separate situation, Mr. Hermonto. One has no relation to the other.
1,000 trees over one?
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
This is a specimen tree as illustrated in your ordinance. I know the tree was not covered under your ordinance, but it's a 200-plus-year-old oak tree, 100 feet tall, 14 feet around, 100 feet of canopy. It's a special tree. It's a historic tree. That's why.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Holmes.
You're welcome.
And I think the rest is to clarify the other was done by a developer on an approved development plan.
Right. Okay. So let me understand, the motion says we're going to release the video and the transcript, is that right? But it's going to be redacted, both the video and the transcript, is that correct?
Correct.
to comply with
Okay.
the law.
John Reeder has concerns, and other residents do, about the video being released. I guess my question to Steve is, are we breaking the law by moving to release this if we would vote that way?
No, I don't think you're breaking the law, subject to properly redacting both the video and the audio portion of the video and portions of the investigative report that reference or refer to personal information of residents and things of that nature. So we have to go through that process,
Okay.
make sure that we're not violating the law.
Are we ready to vote? Oh, John?
I've got a question. If you start redacting parts of the video and parts of the document and things like that, does that mean that people are going to be necessarily satisfied that they have a true picture of what really happened? I mean, it goes on and on. People are going to say, well, you cut out the parts that were important.
So John, what are you suggesting? That we push it under the rug, act like it never happened? Act like
I'm
that?
saying-
People
I'm
stop
suggesting-
you on the road and say, are you going to release that report, or are you trying to cover something up?
No,
I've had 5
I'm
people say that in the
suggesting,
last 2 weeks. That's what I'm reacting to.
I'm suggesting, Ken, that going back to the very original proposition that I made, is that we need to have a policy, that there were levels of investigation, beginning with the chief of police, when going on to the township, when going off onto the solicitor to do a report, the solicitors accepted the report. I don't think anything was swept under the rug. At some point, we have to begin to trust these people up front. That's what I'm saying.
I think this report will do that. It really does.
Maria is next.
Would the board consider releasing this just to the Helms if they requested, since they're a party and they're the ones that have the most vested interest in this?
I wouldn't agree with it.
I don't think I'll agree with that either. Sarah, you next?
I just want to say, I trust you guys to do what's best for the township.
Okay, Brian, you next?
Steve, you talked about redaction. I'm assuming that the redaction you're talking about is like for the items that are listed in the Pennsylvania right to know law, things that are not to be released, et cetera. Am I correct in that?
That's a portion of it.
There's some additional other types of
There are some other
items?
things that relative to, let's say, personal information on police reports about residents that would probably have to be redacted. There are audio portions of the video that get redacted.
But my understanding of the sunshine law is that it specifically says that is to be redacted, it's not to be released. So
That's correct.
You're following.
Yes, we have to follow that law as well as any other developing law. I mean, there's a Commonwealth Court case that just came down recently on this issue. I don't know whether an appeal is going to be taken from that. That wouldn't be law today, but, things are happening in a very fluid fashion with respect to body cams.
Okay, well, but basically, you're following the sunshine law, and as it's been affected by case law that you're aware of, and you're redacting on that basis?
Not the sunshine law. The right to know.
Excuse me, you're right, it's the right to know law.
The right to know, that pertains to the audio-visual portion, the mobile.
I understand that.
That doesn't relate to the report, which we view as protected and confidential information of the township, because it is an investigation involving township personnel.
I'd have to go back and read the law to go and see where you're coming from on that. But just going back to the redaction, if you redact it and there's some type of notation of why it was redacted, it may calm people down. It's not part of the 14 minutes on the Rosemary Woods tapes or something like that. But they at least, this is, had somebody's personal information on it. That's why we redacted it.
Okay, is that it? Are we done?
I'm just wondering, that shows how long you've known me.
Boiler.
Oh, that's right, sorry.
No, it's not Barb time.
Not even done anymore.
It's not Barbie anymore either, I guess.
Anyway, instead of putting it on it scares me that it's just going out to the world. Could people arrange to come view it at the township building, like, have a laptop in the conference room or something if you wanted to view it? That way it kind of limits it from going to YouTube and becoming, for the people outside this township that will never know, and people that care about it will come and look at it.
You have a preamble to movie night at the park?
Not saying that.
Attendance.
Yeah, it would. Have to get grown-up chairs.
Just an idea.
Does protect it from
What do
the
you
going
think,
viral.
What's that?
I'll vote on the motion.
Okay, David wants to vote on the motion as it stands. So is there any other comments? Sarah?
The motion as it stands doesn't talk about how you're going to release it, it just talks about releasing it.
Yes.
Right.
So you're passing by that decision for now.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, motion made and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Before I say no, I just want to say that I am in complete 100% agreement with the conclusion of the investigation report, but I'm still going to vote no for its release.
Okay. Okay, next item on the agenda is to re-advertise the sidewalk construction bid. Jim, what's the story on that?
And the story on that is that there were no bidders, so we'd like to re-advertise,
Okay. We need a motion to do that?
please.
So moved.
Second.
Any comment? All those in favor? Oh, Brian?
On that, are we going to make any changes to it, or are we going to just re-advertise it the same way it is right now?
That's up to the engineer.
What's that again?
It's up to the engineer.
Because the question that occurs to me is, we didn't have any bidders on this, and it's a decent-sized job. Why, didn't we have it? Do we investigate that at all?
I didn't.
Okay, no, I'm not gonna say that.
You finished, Brian?
No,
Hurry up, will you?
there's one question here that I've got. On the 12th of January, Board of Supervisors meeting minutes, it says that the township engineer comes up with an estimate cost of $84,812. That included a 15% contingency, gives a base value of about $73,000. On the Penn Bid website, there was one question: that is a cost estimate available for this project? The answer was the expected contract value is that the general information of the Penn Bid solicitation, and it reads that the contract value is $50,000. Now, we've got an estimate that was going to be $84,000 or $73,000 back in January. Suddenly, we're here in July, we're dropping down to $50,000. Why is there such a drastic difference between the January value and the July value?
Have to talk to the engineer.
We have the engineer coming forward to the next meeting?
Special meeting.
Try to get something in writing from him. That's it. Probably not, huh? Got any other questions?
Say yes.
I'll try to get some questions to you before he shows up so that he can answer in the meeting.
Okay, I won't guarantee you'll answer them, but we will make any effort to get them in front of them. Motion's been made and seconded, there's no more comments. All in favor? Aye. And under new business, John, you had suggested that we have a budget workshop meeting before we get too far into the planning for the 2016 budget. I think we had thought it would be the end of August or September. I think it needs to be done earlier in September to meet the deadlines for the budget to be presented. Isn't that right, Jim?
Yeah, I've given the board what I believe are the deadlines that we're looking at this year.
It's right behind the calendar.
It's right behind the calendar. And the anticipation is that staff will submit a draft budget to the board on October 12th.
So sometime in early September works for you, Jim, best?
Well, you look at the days there, I mean, it's up to the board. I'll work with it, whatever the board wants to do.
How about Thursday the 3rd? Gotta start somewhere. Lucky you. When will you be back?
Ninth.
How about Wednesday the 9th?
Can do that.
John, does that work?
7:30?
Maria, does that work? Hey, that's the way it works.
No, it
I'm not
does.
picking on you. I
No,
know-
it does.
understand how that is,
I
so.
just made plans to
Exactly.
10th and the 11th, so I had to get that straight.
Okay.
So the 9th.
The 9th works, okay. Do we want to set this budget planning meeting for the 9th then?
The 9th works for me, yes.
Yeah, which will be a public meeting, be advertised as a public meeting. For that specific purpose, is that right? Yep. Okay, do I make a motion? Do I hear a motion?
7:30 to me?
Yeah, for the 9th.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor? Aye. Your motion to adjourn?
Sure do.
Second. All those in favor? Aye.